presented by Bud Light. It's for the fans. Golden Flake, the official potato chip of the Alabama Crimson Tide. And by Baumhauer's Victory Grill. Legendary fun, legendary food, and the official watch party location of the Crimson Tide. Now live, this is Crimson Tide Rewind. Here's Roger Hoover.
Roll Tide and welcome to Crimson Tide Rewind, presented by Bud Light. Welcome, everybody. I'm Roger Hoover, filling in for Eli Gold, joined, as always, by Corey Reamer. Roll Tide, everyone.
Hey, it's good to have a crowd back. Nobody showed up after we got beat by LSU. It was a thin crowd here.
I didn't even show up.
Yeah, nobody did. It was just me and Todd holding down the fort.
Yeah, I was away with basketball last week, but it's great to be back at Baumhauer's Victory Grill tonight in Vestavia Hills for Crimson Tide Rewind, and we want to hear from you all throughout the show. If you'd like to join us, give us a call on the Yellowhammer Brewing Hotline, 877-202-BAMA. As you mentioned, always good to talk about a win, especially on the road in the SEC West.
Yeah, it was. The question was, what team's going to show up this week? We got 2 losses, and obviously you saw the LSU-Arkansas game kind of finished up right before we got kicked off, and the hopes of us making it back to Atlanta died right there with that win from LSU. They're going to be representing the West. So what team was going to show up for Alabama this Saturday against Ole Miss? A good Ole Miss team, 8-1, had a lot of success so far, and it's Lane Kiffin. There's a lot of storylines off the field going into this game, and we were all curious if this team was going to rebound and show up and be excited to play with any enthusiasm. And I tell you what, it was a little dire there in the first couple of drives. It didn't look like we were ready to play. Ole Miss was able to move the football pretty quickly, and luckily we were able to get some stops, some fourth down stops, some big ones. But they showed they cared, which was great. The competitors came out in them. They showed up and played and found a way to win. But another game that comes down to a final drive with 2 minutes left to go in the ball game. I don't know if anybody as Alabama fans can handle any more stress on the heart that we have had this season.
Yeah, think of all the games that have gone right down to that final drive, but the defense was able to make a play even after Ole Miss was able to move into Crimson Tide territory, get close to the red zone. Alabama able to get that big stop on fourth down.
Yeah, that was huge. It was Brian Branch with a great play, great technique, just finding a way to get it done. And it was the game we won. Let's don't take that away from the fact. But the fact was that we still – there was a lot of the same things that we've been seeing throughout this season. So it's just frustrating from that standpoint. But what I loved about this game on Saturday was they fought back. They got down 10 points early, 10 points at another point in the game. The first half didn't look great, and they came out in that second half and just had a completely different mindset. It seemed like a level of energy that we hadn't seen, some excitement. And I even looked at some guys I was watching the game with. I was like, are they having fun? It looks like they're having fun. They're getting excited after big plays, pancake blocks going on here, big runs. The running game gets going in the second half. It was just good to see, and I know the players were enjoying it. It's just more fun to go out there and play that kind of football and have a good time. But there for a little while, it was like, here we go again. Same old that we've been talking about every single week. Just making the same mistakes, drop balls, penalties, bad time penalties on 3rd and long when your defense has a chance to get off the field. But they were able to overcome those. And I think that this team really enjoyed this win. I mean, it was a big one to go on the road with all the road worries that we've had so far this season. To go out there and find a way to win the ballgame was huge.
7 straight wins for Alabama against Ole Miss. 30-24 was the final score in Oxford on Saturday. Again, if you'd like to join us on the show tonight, we'd love to take your calls on the Yellowhammer Brewing Hotline. Again, the number 877-202-BAMA. Stay tuned for more. It's Crimson Tide Rewind, live from Baumhauer's Victory Grill in Vestavia Hills. This is the Crimson Tide Sports Network from Learfield.
Gibbs in the backfield now to the left side. Actually, McClellan, they'll throw the slant, catch is made, touchdown, Alabama. Jermaine Burton makes the grab as Bryce Young threads the needle, and the Tide gets on the board. To the right of Jackson Dart, the quarterback, that's Jet.
One of 3 touchdown passes for Bryce Young on Saturday against the Ole Miss Rebels as Alabama picked up the 30-24 win over Ole Miss. Want to remind you to keep up with everything Alabama with the Alabama Crimson Tide mobile app presented by Cadence Bank. It's available at the App Store and Google Play. Download the Alabama Crimson Tide mobile app now for free. We saw Bryce Young throw 3 touchdown passes, 209 yards, and also looked like he stepped up in terms of his vocal leadership on the sidelines. He was getting after it with the offense, and then Coach Saban joined the conversation as well.
Yeah, sometimes you need a little butt chewing to get things going. You could just tell that it just wasn't the first few drives going out there. Like I said, it just looked stale. These guys just weren't playing with this level of energy that you expect to see. And, you know, Bryce Young goes up there, huddles the team up, huddles the offense up. Let's get things going. I mean, guys, we're here, we're playing. Let's go out there and compete. We've got an opportunity. We're making some big plays. We're doing some good things, but we're not putting some drives together. Defense is holding on, getting some stops on 4th down, giving us the ball back, and we're digging a hole right here. We're down 10-0, and we've got to change something, or it's going to be a long day. It could have gotten out of hand pretty quickly. But the defense played a great game. But going out there, seeing them on the side, I got excited. I got excited seeing him huddling the team up and getting after him a little bit. And then Coach Saban joining in too. It's just you hadn't seen that a ton on the sidelines, and there's been a lot of questions of who's that guy? Who are these vocal leaders that get the team going when everything's not going the right way? So. Bryce had another good day, made a lot of miraculous plays with his feet, scrambling around in the pocket. I'd love to know what his rush yards are behind the line of scrimmage, not from when he actually takes off and runs, but just when he's running around trying to make some plays, because he's got to have just as many of those as he does actually running beyond the line of scrimmage for a run play. Because he's just running around all over the place. I mean, whenever he can, break away, trying to make a play.
Yeah, we've talked to a couple offensive linemen about what's it like to block for Bryce when those plays are happening. They just keep saying, well, you just got to find another guy and hit him.
Yeah, and
don't know when that block's going to help.
And there's it's funny to watch too. There's quarterbacks that are out there that are just fast and just take off running, and it's just amazing. You watch him, it's not like he's in slow motion, but he's not doing a ton, but he's so shifty to just get away, avoid that, make that first guy miss, rolling out, and you never know when the play's going to – what I love to see this past weekend is that, again, for the second week in a row, he wasn't as afraid to take off and give what the defense was – or take what the defense is giving him, making plays with his feet, extending drives. It's always good to see. I think he's feeling a little bit better. It looked like his timing with his receivers was a little bit better this week than last week. Hopefully that's a good sign of things to come.
Again, we're going to take your calls on the Yellowhammer Brewing Hotline, 877-202-BAMA, but we'll also answer some questions on all the different video streams we have going on as we're streaming live on the Crimson Tide Sports Network Facebook page, Twitter page, as well as YouTube. And Steve has a question on the YouTube stream asking, Corey, how do you evaluate the performance of Henry To'o? To'o is a linebacker. And the second part to that question, maybe a take on Robbie Ashford, Auburn quarterback against Alabama in 2 weeks. We're not looking too far ahead of the Iron Bowl. We'll talk about it some.
Yeah, To'o's had a good season. I mean, I think there's some, he's not the big guy that's in the middle that we've, grown accustomed to in the past of the Rolando McClains and all those guys that really stuff the run really well in, the A gaps. But he's played them extremely well. Unfortunately, a lot of the times when that's happening, we were in the goal line stand a lot this past weekend, and I thought he filled the hole and made some pretty good hits. Unfortunately, they only have to go for a half yard. It's kind of hard to stuff runs when that's as far as you got to go. But he's a guy you can't appreciate the fact that he's transferred into this program, knows this defense. He is the signal caller, gets everybody lined up. I thought he's had a great season, and he's really good at pass coverage too. I mean, he's a guy that can run with anybody, sideline to sideline. Whenever we get some offenses that try to stretch the defense east and west, and he's got the speed to track some guys down. And for Robbie Ashford, I watched a little bit of that game this past weekend against Texas A&M. Big win for them at home for Cadillac. Robbie's going to be a tough one. You just watch the athleticism that he has. He can make people miss. He's got that speed that we were just talking about. When he takes off running, there's no guessing what he's about to go do. He's not looking to continue the play or make a throw downfield. He's taking off and running, and he's just an extremely good athlete from the Hoover area. We've heard a lot about him as he's coming up through high school, goes to Oregon, transfers back into Auburn, and he's ended up being the guy for the back half of the season for those Auburn Tigers, and it's going to be a tough matchup because it's no secret. Every time we face a running quarterback, it's always, how are you going to stop this guy? Because this style of defense that Alabama likes to play. We put man-to-man coverage all across the board, and we might be seeing a lot of the same game plan that LSU did against us with number 40 for LSU on defense. You got to have a spy for somebody like that. And To'oTo'o is a guy that can run. He might be that guy that can do that. But you've got to have somebody that's very quick to chase this guy down because he's got 4.3, 4.4 speed. He can make a lot of guys miss.
Speaking of the Iron Bowl, why don't you stop by Innisfree downtown Tuscaloosa this Wednesday night for Bud Light specials from 9 to 11 p.m. and your chance to win a pair of tickets to the Iron Bowl, courtesy of Bud Light and the Crimson Tide Sports Network. We'll continue with more in just a moment. This is the Crimson Tide Sports Network from Learfield.
Young looking, throwing, caught, touchdown. Cameron Latu makes the grab in traffic, 8 yards. Alabama trying to claw their way back. The Tide pulls to within 4.
If you'd like to join us on Crimson Tide Rewind tonight, give us a call on the Yellowhammer Brewing hotline, 877-202-BAMA. And when we take that first call this evening, it's presented by Alabama 811. Alabama 811 reminding you to call 811 before you dig to know what's below. The Crimson Tide were trailing 17-7, getting late in the first half. Ole Miss fumbles. Alabama's able to go into the end zone after that with Cameron Latu touchdown to make it 17-14. What a huge turning point in the ballgame that was.
That was an absolute game changer. You talking about Ole Miss getting the ball back and being able to move the ball pretty consistently throughout that first half. You're giving them the ball back with, 2.5, 3 minutes left to go before halftime. All of a sudden, what looked like just a normal running play, and you see the replay, you see the ball come out, and you see Terrion Arnold pick it up, and easily nobody in between him and the end zone. And nobody really thought much of it until you saw the replay and that ball was out. And it made me a little nervous that they blew the play dead, because I was like, now we've got to put our offense, who hasn't done much at this point, and we've got to find our way into the end zone. But, I mean, absolute game changer. You talk about what would have happened if Ole Miss doesn't fumble there, and then they score going into halftime and got maybe a 24-7 lead or even a 20-7 lead. That's a deficit that's going to be harder to overcome, and what it does to the psyche of that team at the same time, being down that much at halftime. Would we have been able to bounce back? But and that even though we were only 23 yards away from the end zone where they blew the play dead, still had to go convert 2 third downs to get it into the end zone eventually. It wasn't exactly an easy offensive drive for us, but found a way to get it in right before half, cut the deficit down to 3 going into halftime, and then I think it just lit a charge in this team coming out for that second half, because what you saw in the first half versus what came out in the second half was 2 completely different teams. I think it just gave them a little bit of life. We can win this ball game, and we just got to keep playing. You never know what's going to happen. That's why you play all 4 quarters. You never know what's going to change. But that was a huge play. I was real upset they blew it dead. I was like, because at that point in time, I just wasn't sure if we were going to be able to punch it in.
Well, a great moment for the Tide, making it the 3-point game at halftime. Then Alabama outscored Ole Miss 16-7 in the second half. We'll talk about more of that coming up in just a bit as we continue with Crimson Tide Rewind, and this is the Crimson Tide Sports Network from Learfield.
direction. He will bounce to his right. He'll roll. He will pump fake. He'll throw it. Back of the end zone. Catch made. Brooks. Touchdown, Alabama.
To be part of tonight's Crimson Tide Rewind show, you can also submit your question to Corey Reamer on the Alabama Media Group Twitter line at UA_CTSN. That's brought to you by AL.com, your source for SEC sports. We have Ethan Carabin, our video producer, also taking a look at all the different live streams, looking out for questions that you have as well as we continue talking about a win for the Crimson Tide against the Ole Miss Rebels. Again, 30-24 was the final score. And once again, Will Reichard, a solid performance when Alabama needed him most on Saturday.
Yeah, I think he's what game was it that he had a couple of misses? Texas A&M, was that where it was?
Arkansas missed one, then two against A&M, and then one against Tennessee.
10 for 10 since then. Yeah, he's rebounded nicely, which is always what you hope to see from a kicker. You never know. There's a lot of mental games that go on for kickers, and he's got a lot of confidence, and he just had a little blip on the radar there this season. But he's hitting from distance too. I think his average field goal is around like 38 or 40 yards every time he's kicking. So it's not like he's hitting chip shots when we put him out there on the field. So good to see him out there getting back in his groove, and obviously came in clutch for us again today, taking over for the leading scorer in Alabama history, and just padding the stats right now. He's going to try to make it impossible for anybody to catch him.
Also kicking on a cold day like that.
Yeah.
Not fun.
Yeah, I can't imagine. I have no idea. I never kicked in my life. I'm sure it doesn't feel very good on the foot, but if tackling hurts, I imagine kicking a football doesn't feel very good either.
Not at all.
You wouldn't want me doing that. You definitely wouldn't want me out there right now.
Well, congratulations to Will Reichard, earlier today named the SEC Specialist of the Week, the SEC Defensive Lineman of the Week. Alabama's Byron Young, back-to-back weeks. He has really made an impact for this Crimson Tide football team.
He had a phenomenal game. 11 tackles, 2 sacks, pass breakup, and a forced fumble. He was all over the field. I mean, you could just feel his presence every single series that he was out there. He was just making plays, just disrupting a lot of what Ole Miss was trying to do, getting in the face of Jackson Dart. Whether he was able to get throws off or not, he felt Byron Young most of the night and was able to shut down the running game. Even though we talked about, Ole Miss's running game is pretty good with their freshman running back, Quinshon Judkins, and he had a big game, 25 carries for 130-something yards, and he proved us that he's a pretty good player. He's from the state of Alabama, from Pike Road, and a guy that got out of this state, goes over to Ole Miss, and is having a phenomenal freshman year. And he was really the lifeblood of their offense for a lot of the night. But Byron Young, he's been a great player. Got hurt a little bit a couple weeks ago, bounces back really nicely, and has a huge game for us tonight. It was great to see. That front seven really played extremely well, in my opinion. Yeah,
having DJ Dale back once again, Jaheim Otis again, kind of back at full strength, and then linebackers right behind them doing their job.
Yeah, I mean it's when you got the whole group. Injuries it's the name of the game. If you want to be successful in this league, you got to be healthy. And as we talked about it well back at the beginning of the season, that depth on that front seven wasn't exactly what we're used to having, where you can shuffle 3 guys in, 4 guys in at a time, and really replace that defensive line so you can get some fresh legs out there. It really drops off when you got a couple guys out. So we needed all of them back. And I mean, they make a huge impact. And the front seven, Will Anderson, and that defensive front really wreaked a lot of havoc in that second half. I think they had 3 sacks and 7 tackles for losses. They were in the backfield making plays. It's good to see. We've all been talking a lot about Will Anderson, Dallas Turner, and all these guys that are up front, all these playmakers that we've got. And they really showed up, especially in the second half of this game, to shut down that. Ole Miss scored 7 points in the second half, and that was early in the third quarter, midway through the third quarter, and never found the end zone again. A lot of it had to do with those front seven guys just not allowing them to get in those, short down and distance situations, cause them to back the chains up. You got 3rd and long, 3rd and 10 plus. It makes it tough for an offense to be able to convert those consistently throughout the night. And Alabama fans know that all too well, because that's been the situation for our offense for a lot of this season, having those longer down and distance situations. But, yeah, good to see those guys back.
Part of the fun on Saturday in the win against Ole Miss. We'll continue having fun at Baumhower's Victory Grill in Vestavia Hills here tonight with Crimson Tide Rewind. This is the Crimson Tide Sports Network from Learfield.
To the right of Jackson Dart, the quarterback. That's Judkins backfield with him. Gets the snap, stepping up in the pocket. Pressure coming, makes one man miss. Can't make another miss. Byron Young, the defensive end, coming over to make the stop. And Ole Miss will have to punt it away. Quarterback draw, nowhere to go. He goes down. Young with the sack. Bama forcing the 3-and-out for the Rebels after taking the lead for the first time today.
Hey, if you'd like to be part of tonight's Crimson Tide Rewind show, submit your question to Corey Reamer on the Alabama Media Group Twitter line at UA_CTSN. Your source, AL.com, of course, is your source for SEC sports. And also be keeping an eye on our YouTube, Twitter, and Facebook streams for your questions as well as we continue talking about a big win for the Crimson Tide, 30-24 over Ole Miss as the Crimson Tide keep moving forward for what's left in this season. That includes coming up this week against Austin Peay.
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously an FCS opponent. This is a good game for us to kind of fine-tune a few things for the last game of the season, hopefully a bowl game. But, you got to get up and get going. It's going to be an early kick, 11 a.m. Yeah, I see we got a question there on the what is that, the Twitter line?
On our Facebook stream, Everett asking about how do you go about getting the day started for a game that starts at 11 a.m. So does everything move up?
Yeah,
how does it work?
It does. It starts early. You got breakfast at 6. You got to get down there because you got to be at the stadium 2 hours before kickoff. So that's, you back that in. That's 9 o'clock. You're at the stadium. That means you've got breakfast, meetings, walkthroughs, all that before you depart at around 8:30 to go towards the stadium. So it's an early morning. It depends on how you look at it. You get a good night's sleep, you get going, you get up and just the day started. You don't have time to sit around and think about it. But it's not my preference. It wasn't my preference as a player. I like to sleep in and kind of take my time getting going. But you got to wake it up. You got to it's coming. Get up, wake your body up, get moving. That was always the thing Coach Saban was huge emphasis on, was get the body moving. You can't sleep in till the very last minute and just get some food and head over to the stadium, go play. And you got to get up, walk around. We'd always take a lap around the hotel just to wake it up. Just get outside and get things going. So it's going to be an early day, I know, for us as well. Start the broadcast a little bit earlier.
Yeah, and I have the problem too. If I know I have to wake up early, I can't really sleep that well the night before.
You're anxious about it. Anxious about it, but it'll be good. It's good. Good to get this game going after this big win. There's still a lot to play for, like we talked about on the pregame. These seniors have a lot to play for, and all things go to plan. You hopefully get to see a lot of the younger guys get some opportunities to get out there and get some snaps. But that's not going to happen. We've talked about that before in years past, where we've got these type of games that are coming up, and all of a sudden you've only got a touchdown lead at halftime when you really don't go out there and take care of business. And that's the emphasis for Coach Saban. It always has been, is it doesn't matter who's on the other sideline. Go execute like we're supposed to. And then you can take your shoulder pads off in the third, fourth quarter. But you let these guys hang around. They're coming in. They're excited to play. And with the way college football is, even at these smaller schools, there's some good players at every single game. You look at what Deion Sanders has been able to do recruiting at Jackson State. I mean, there's good players all over the place. It's not concentrated to the top 4 teams like it was in the past. So, we'll hopefully go out there and just take care of business and don't have to sweat it out like they've been making us sweat these games out for the rest all season long. So hopefully this one will be a rocking chair game.
Absolutely, and that's part of it on the first team as well. It's kind of their job to make sure they establish it early, allowing everybody to get their opportunity to play a game like this.
Yeah, you go out there and you're just kind of hoping, you're just looking forward to that time where you can take your helmet off and relax a little bit. That's when you get some surprises. So set the tone early, go out there and start fast, and that's the quickest way that you'll get off the field and let some of these younger guys get some reps, is take care of business. There's no doubt that it's a matchup that should be favorable for a lot of reasons for us, but Austin Peay is a good team for an FCS program. They've had a lot of success over the past few years, and it's not like they're just going to come in and lay down. They're not going to be intimidated by all the lights and everything else, and they're going to be ready to play.
Crimson Tide and the Austin Peay Governors coming up this Saturday at 11 a.m. Our radio airtime will be 8 a.m. from Bryant-Denny Stadium, as we'll have an early morning coming up on Saturday. I want to remind you as well, tomorrow will be rather a late night for Alabama men's basketball, tipping off at 9 o'clock down in Mobile against the South Alabama Jaguars. Our radio coverage for tomorrow night will begin at 8 o'clock, and then women's basketball will play at 6 p.m. coming up on Wednesday, going to Tampa to take on USF. So it's once again a very busy weekend here here on the network as we continue with this overlap season between basketball and football. Here at Baumhower's Victory Grill, you can celebrate 40 years of Baumhower's this fall with new flavors including Alabama hot chicken, fajita wraps, and legendary buffalo wings. Baumhower's Victory Grill, legendary fun, legendary food. When we come back, we'll hear from the head coach of the Crimson Tide, Nick Saban, as he met with the media earlier today in Tuscaloosa. This is the Crimson Tide Sports Network from Learfield. At home for the final two regular season games of the season, starting with this Saturday's showdown with Austin Peay. Earlier today, it was Coach Saban kicking off game week with his weekly Monday press conference, and here's what he had to say earlier today in Tuscaloosa.
Well, look, the first thing, it was great to see our players happy and excited to be celebrating a win, a really good win for them. After getting behind in the game 17-7, to come back and sort of play the way we're capable of playing and do things with sort of a relentless competitive sort of spirit and enthusiasm and togetherness as a team, I think was great. And it was, really good to see the players happy, excited, and celebrating because they were happy that they had put something in something and got a positive result. In reviewing the film, obviously, I think that we always have to be able to focus on taking advantage of opportunities that we have. We also have to focus on making sure that we learn the lessons of things that we do that actually help the other team have opportunities in the game as well. So those are all lessons to be learned. I think the focus needs to be on our team, what our team needs to do to each individual on our team and each unit on our team. What do we need to do to improve? What do we need to do to try to do a better job with consistency and execution in terms of what we do as coaches, as well as how we get the players to stay focused so that we can execute with more consistency.
And that's the head coach of the Crimson Tide, Nick Saban, meeting with the media earlier today as Alabama starts preparation for what's coming up this Saturday with Austin Peay. And I know a lot of fans would like to see, once again, the running game have as much success coming up this week as what we saw, especially late in the game against Ole Miss.
Yeah, I think we had 12 rushes in the first half. It was for 24 yards. And running game just wasn't able to get going. But that second half, man, it was like, I know you look at the stats, it wasn't anything just to get like overly excited about. And we didn't bust any long runs, but we were just running old school running plays, and we're able to get some push up front, open some holes, and going for 10, 12 yards. That's all we're asking for. Just get us some pops where we got some second and third down and short opportunities in that running game. We really leaned heavily on that running game in the second half. But, yeah, that first half, it was still – trying to get things going. Jahmyr Gibbs, I watched the tape again back today, and I saw where he got his ankle rolled up, and then maybe that's why he was out so much of the second half. But Jason McClellan stepped up nicely and really ran behind his pads. And just, I think there was a point in the third quarter with like 3 minutes left to go, 2nd and 10, and he just bulldozes through about 6 Ole Miss defenders and offensive lines coming up and pushing behind them and getting them across that first down line. And you could just tell, it just felt different. You know, when you got those kind of plays, those are the things that get everybody on the sideline, everybody in the huddle. It just ramps the energy up tenfold when you've got something like that going. And we just haven't had those types of runs throughout this season. And it just helps us so much from an offensive play calling perspective when you're not having to go for 3rd and 8, 3rd and 10 situations. And I know we were still averaging, 7+ yards to go on 3rd down because we just weren't moving the ball early on 1st and 2nd down. But in the second half, it was a completely different story. We were able to really get some pop. And it was just fun to watch those guys. Emil Ekiyor on that pull and just pancake blocking. So we talked about it last week.
We did.
We discussed it in that LSU. After that LSU game, it's like, where is that tone-setting play going to come from? Who is going to make it? It could be a pancake block. It could be a big run. It could be anything where your players just get excited and they jump up and they just got something going. You can just tell they've got an energy level that they hadn't seen a lot from this season. So good to see them finally finding some success on the ground. And that was the thing going into this game, too. It was disheartening early on because this was an Ole Miss team that hasn't been very good against the run. And we weren't having any success in the running game. And it was just, why can't we figure this out? And it finally started wearing down that Ole Miss defense. And that offensive line just continued to lean on those guys and push and find a way to make holes. And Jason McClellan did a great job. And Roydell Williams as well. Both those guys filling in for Jahmyr while he's standing on the sideline at the end of the game, making the most of their opportunities.
Certainly did. And it seems like that was one of the best games the offensive line's played all year.
Yeah, it was. I mean, they just really didn't give up a lot of pressure. And Ole Miss was trying to do a lot of what we saw from all these other teams that have had success against this offense is dropping 8, rushing 3. And they stood up to the test this go-around. And they had some big plays on the defensive side of the ball. But for the most part, that night, there was a couple sacks in early on. But for the most part, that offensive line, you could just tell. You want to see that offensive line just moving the line of scrimmage, incrementally as you go. You just don't want to see them getting pushed back into the pocket. And on running games, just reestablish that line of scrimmage 2-3 yards down the field, and they were able to do it. They were able to get a lot of push. It was a great game by the offensive line as a whole, all across the board, all night long.
Got to say a special thank you to Onward Reserve, the official apparel provider of the Crimson Tide Sports Network, for the great gear this season. Visit onwardreserve.com for all of your game day apparel. Live authentically with Onward Reserve. This pullover helped keep me warm on the sidelines all throughout the ball game on Saturday. A very cold Saturday in Oxford, Mississippi, but a winning one for the Crimson Tide, 30-24 the final. Again, visit onwardreserve.com for all of your game day apparel. Live authentically with Onward Reserve. You're listening to Crimson Tide Rewind, presented by Bud Light. This is the Crimson Tide Sports Network from Learfield.
The Tide able to come to Oxford, coming from behind, getting it done against a really good Rebel team. Alabama is going to win it. Your final score, 30-24. The Tide comes back and wins it. What guts John Parker Wilson from Nick Saban's squad.
And that was Chris Stewart with the final call of the game, filling in for Eli Gold on Saturday. This is Roger Hoover filling in for Eli on this Monday night, along with Corey Reamer, who's always a part of Crimson Tide Rewind. Even last week, you and Todd had a very good edition of the show.
Yeah, we missed you.
Yeah, definitely miss you guys. And it's time for one of our favorite segments, talking about the prescription for success for this Crimson Tide football team. It's presented by Payless Drugs, your locally owned family pharmacy with 4 locations in Birmingham. Payless can handle your prescriptions, over-the-counter solutions, and home delivery. Payless at mynewpharmacy.com. Getting ready for this game against Austin Peay. What's the prescription for success for the Tide?
Yeah, we talked about it a little bit earlier. So just getting out and getting started fast, especially with this 11 o'clock kick. It's going to be a little chilly out there. Just going out there and taking care of business. This week of practice it was always a tough one as a player when you know what you're going up against. But these are the biggest moments and the biggest teaching moments that Coach Saban always had as a coach is we've got to be able to train your mind to just go out there and practice about. You heard him talking about it in the press conference. If we focus on what it is that we got to work on for us to get better, and he never mentions who's on the other sideline. It's all about us. And there's a lot of, even though we get the win this past Saturday, there's still a lot of improvement. We've touched on a lot of different things through this show today that can still be improved upon. But the defense going out there and playing like they did this past weekend and just not giving Austin Peay any life from the offensive side of the ball, and then offense coming out there and putting points on the board early and often taking care of the football. You know, turnovers has been the story of the season. We're negative in the turnover category in terms of a year long. Had a couple one turnover and then another opportunity for an interception. We got to take care of the football on offense, create turnovers, all the standard answers that I could possibly give you for success for a game like this. I mean, it just boils down to the attitude of the players. They got to take this week seriously because we got another big game next week, but we always talk about improving week on every single week, and this is just another opportunity to do that. Go out there and play, get some of these younger guys some reps because they're going to be a big part of not just this season but next. And we saw a few of them this past weekend, Deontay Lawson and Kendrick Law getting involved in the offensive game plan and the defensive game plan, and they made some huge plays for us on both sides of the ball. And you need these teaching opportunities with a game like this for them to get some experience to where it's not new for them whenever it's their turn to step up and go play.
So the Crimson Tide and the Austin Peay Governors coming up again on Saturday at 11 a.m. inside Bryant-Denny Stadium. Our radio coverage will begin at 8 o'clock across the network for the Tide and the Govs. When we come back, we'll talk about what else is coming up for the Crimson Tide as we start to wrap up this edition of Crimson Tide Rewind. Again, we've been live tonight at Baumhower's Victory Grill in Vestavia Hills. This is the Crimson Tide Sports Network from Learfield. Crimson Tide and Austin Peay will kick it off coming up on Saturday at 11 o'clock at Bryant-Denny Stadium. Radio airtime will be at 8 a.m., and that's what's on tap next for Bama. It's brought to you by Bud Light. Bud Light proudly welcomes back Tide fans to Bryant-Denny Stadium. This year, Bud Light is for the fans, and another reminder coming up with the Iron Bowl looming as well after the Austin Peay game. If you're looking for a place to tailgate for the Iron Bowl, we invite you to Druid City Social on Saturday, November 26th for Bud Light's Iron Bowl tailgate, featuring live music and ice-cold Bud Lights. Leading up to kickoff, we will see you there. Again, the Crimson Tide have Austin Peay and Auburn coming up, and as we mentioned earlier, we knew even by kickoff of the Ole Miss game that LSU had won the SEC West, so Brian Kelly, his first year in Baton Rouge, gets the Tigers back to Atlanta. We'll face Georgia for the championship.
Yeah, big first year for Brian Kelly. Going out there, you beat Alabama your first year, and you get LSU into the SEC championship, going to face that vaunted Georgia team who looks like they haven't really slipped off at all from last year's national championship team. They're playing some really good football. We saw them last week against Tennessee and how dominating they were in that game. It's going to be tough. It's going to be tough for LSU, but we saw how LSU started this season with a loss against Florida State and what they've been able to do since then. This team really is starting to put a lot of the pieces of the puzzle together. They've got a lot of buy-in, and they've got a lot of confidence the way that they're playing. Arkansas was a little bit of a tougher game than most people probably expected, but that is always a tough game. LSU and Arkansas, it's kind of one of those that you can always write it down. It's always going to be a closer game than most people expect, no matter how good each of those teams are. But there's a lot of playoff implications that are still out there. One of them is LSU's got to be able to finish strong, and you never know what's going to happen in Atlanta. And then the playoff committee's got a pretty tough task in front of them. If you've got a 2-loss LSU team as an SEC champion and a 1-loss Georgia team and a 1-loss Tennessee team, Ohio State, Michigan, TCU, Oregon, a Pac-12 champion, it's going to be tough. And I think that I've heard a lot of conversations of potential expansion of the playoff. You know, everybody wants to talk about it, but this year you can see across the board, and you take the eye test out of it, you just look at records, and TCU was a underdog at Texas this past weekend and goes in and gets the win. So they're making a pretty good argument for them to be in this playoff. Ranked number 4 right now. I don't know if they're coming out with the new rankings tomorrow, but I imagine they're going to be 4 still with not much changing in the front. But you go to Ohio State and Michigan. They're going to be playing each other at the end of the game. What are they going to do for this 14 playoff if you can have absolute chaos at the end of the season if some things unfold the way that they possibly could? Now, is that going to happen? Who knows? But it's definitely possible. There's about 8 teams that are out there that are vying for those 4 positions in the playoffs. So it's going to be a fun last. Unfortunately, we're not involved.
Right.
That's the bad part about it is we're not involved. We still got a lot to play for, but it's going to be a fun end of the college football season.
I just have a bad feeling. I don't know why this is. Maybe it's because Alabama and Georgia played for the championship last year. If that Ohio State-Michigan game goes down to the wire, I think this is the year they reward the Big Ten with both of those teams.
Yeah. There's been a lot of conversation. There's a tired of the SEC taking all of the headlines, and there's plenty of people who are out there who don't want to see 2 teams from the SEC get in. Even though if you look at the body of work from Tennessee, LSU, and Georgia, what they've been able to accomplish this year, somebody's going to get left out, and it's not going to be fun for one of those teams.
Pac-12 too.
And you got Pac-12 as well. I mean, there's a lot of teams that are deserving at this point. Luckily, there are still a lot of games left to be played. Some of them against 2 undefeateds, but like you said, you got that Michigan-Ohio State game. If it comes down to the wire, how are you going to kick one of those teams out for, especially a 2-loss LSU team, even if they win the SEC?
You can't leave out
does
Georgia
get in over an LSU team that they just got beat by? I mean, it could be. We've seen it happen before. Crazier things have happened in college football, but it's going to be pretty tough to be the committee that's got to select these last 4 teams if all of that happens. Now, it might be all for naught. It might just be exactly who you expect to be in it. But Michigan holds. They've been looking good. Everybody talked about Michigan, their strength of schedule, and they've been playing extremely good football, better than I would say they did last year when they made it in. I think they look better this year than they did last year. So, like you said, if it comes down to the wire, it's going to be interesting.
Certainly will be. It will be interesting for the Crimson Tide as well. Again, Austin Peay on Saturday and then the Iron Bowl after that. It's a fun time of the year, Corey Reamer. We look forward to it.
It is. Roll Tide. Looking forward to we got 2 more weeks, 2 more games, finish the season off.
And again, 2 more editions after this one of Crimson Tide Rewind coming up here at Baumhower's Victory Grill. The next 2 Monday nights will be with you talking Tide football. If you missed any portion of tonight's show, you can catch it on demand on the Alabama Insider Podcast. Download and subscribe wherever you get your podcast. That does it for Crimson Tide Rewind. It's presented by Bud Light, live from Baumhower's Victory Grill in Vestavia Hills. Thanks to our on-site engineer, Todd Robbins. Producers, back at our Learfield studios, Ethan Sargent and producer emeritus Jerry Kelly, as well as our video producer, Ethan Carabin. For Corey Reamer, I'm Roger Hoover, filling in for Eli, saying good night, Roll Tide.